instead of drunk calling friends, I just like drunk go on like Instagram Live and start talking to people, and I was like, this is not healthy.
Evening everyone, Greg here. We are now into the second half of this new series of Midnight Chats. We're 5 episodes deep. Do check out the podcasts we released in the past few weeks with the likes of Idols, Tim Burgess, Phoebe Bridgers, Matt Berninger from The National, and last time out, Ezra Collective's Femi Colioso. And if the state of the world is getting to you right now, I really don't blame you if it is, trust me, that conversation with Femi is guaranteed to pick you up at least a little bit. Got a super mellow podcast for you this evening. Tonight's guest is Jess Smyth, better known as Biig Piig. On a stuffy hot day back in mid-August, Jess rocked up with a coffee and water to the Loud and Quiet office in East London to record the conversation you're about to hear. Coincidentally, she'd spent some of the lockdown earlier in 2020 living in a flat just a couple of streets away. Anyway, much like her music, Biig Piig is a laid-back character, very open, very chilled. I first met her back in 2017 for a feature for Loud and Quiet magazine, and I've stuck a link to that piece in the show notes along with some other bits that we talked about. But in that, we talked about the surprising variety of jobs that she'd done, even at an early age, and her life growing up in Ireland and Spain. Now, in the 3 years since then, a lot has happened, a lot has changed. She's released 3 EPs, also continued to make music as a member of the 9/8 Collective, and picked up famous fans in the form of Billie Eilish and Clairo. In terms of recent stuff, the 22-year-old's track Switch is one of my most played of the year, and she keeps the bangers coming. Don't Turn Around and Oh No, both recently released, are so good. Before we get into it, the keenest amongst you will have noticed that this is episode 99 of Midnight Chats, a wild achievement for us. I'm not sure we ever thought we'd get this far, but thank you for listening. We've got something extra special lined up for our 100th podcast, so keep your eyes on the feed for news on that. But let's get into tonight's Midnight Chats, starting with some conversation about the August heatwave. Warm weather, remember that? I'm not sure I do. This is episode 99 with Biig Piig.
I do like the heat, but I don't think London's built for it. I feel like everyone's just like sweating on each other and just like in a panic, like, what do we do? Yeah, I liked it. I think it was nice. I have no fan in my house though, no AC. And my house was like made of wood. So everything was like really hot and we were just like, it was grand though. I feel like I really missed the rain. And when the rain came on, I was just like, yeah, it was really nice.
I saw social media was basically like in the days before the rain turned up. I mean, this is like, this is a bit like kind of like, oh, poor us, we managed to get through like 6 days of hot weather. But like Twitter, people were just like doing like rain dances online, just like, please, like bring us some respite.
Yeah, literally all the rain soundtracks.
Just tell me a little bit about how things are at the moment. What kind of level of like normality, like day to day, are you at? Like, what are you kind of, have you managed to return to doing the things you were doing at the start of the year? Or like, how are the days filled at the moment?
Right now, I mean, I've just started to go back into studio, which is really, really nice. I feel like, I don't know, I haven't been back in ages. And I really kind of took, I don't know, the start of lockdown, I was like, I'm going to write so much and do so much and everything else. And once it actually started, things were just a lot more intense than I thought. And I was just like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to feel. So I think I just kind of put it on the back burner. And then having that kind of a break of shows and break of like making music and actually just listening to music and taking the time to appreciate other art, I think it was it was nice and it was healthy, I think, in a sense. And I'm saying that from a very fucking lucky perspective, but it was good. And then I think going back into studio now, it's just like trying to understand how I did that before. Do you know what I mean? Just kind of like working out how to be with someone in a room.
It's odd, you sort of lose those skills.
Yeah,
those
you just forget skills. Them. Yeah.
I'm trying to like recall like those first few weeks of lockdown were just full of people being like, I'm going to use this time proactively to learn a new hobby or a new skill or bake banana bread or or do whatever.
There's a lot of that.
I know, there really was, wasn't it? I didn't fall into that one.
I didn't actually have any banana bread.
No, apparently flour was really difficult to get hold of. You didn't find yourself doing that kind of thing.
No, I did. What did I do? So the first few weeks, it feels like so long ago now, but I did start to do kind of like, I think I went a bit mad and I was like, I'm just going to start reading bedtime stories on Instagram for like whatever, and kids' books and stuff like that. And that was fun. Teaching Spanish, I tried. I think I've forgotten a lot more than I thought I had, but that was cool. So I did that every week.
Tutoring people online
or on Instagram Live. So cool. I did like little lessons every like 2 days a week or something, and that was really cool. But most of like the comments are always like, we speak Spanish, like it's all right. And then what else did I do? Got into a relationship, so that was a lot, but that was definitely a learning experience, I think. And yeah, and I think that was kind of it. I've been moving as well, because I moved from White City where I was to East London, just down here, to an empty flat, so it was fine. It wasn't like moving into people. And then I had my ex move in with me, and then from there we moved into another flat that was empty as well, just down the road. And then after that he left, and I was like, I need somewhere that's going to settle me and actually just relax. Then the last month I've just found somewhere, so I moved in there in Forest Hill, so that was nice.
So lockdown wasn't quiet at all. That sounds quite turbulent.
Yeah, it was really intense. It was really, really intense. I think it was just a case of like no one knows what to do, and we just were like, yeah, sure, we've met 3 times, but we can move in together. Sure, that's fine. And then doing that and being like, this is a bad idea. Maybe we need to like, I don't know. And then just, yeah, it was all quite intense, to be fair. But it was grand. Okay. And yeah, it wasn't boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you feeling now? Are you okay?
Yeah. I'm good. I feel like I'm finally settled down. I think it's just like, it's just that thing of like, even though this year has gone so slowly, it's also gone so fast. And I think you don't get a moment really to sit down and reflect on it, because you just kind of, I don't know, you kind of forget it as it goes, because you're like, this just isn't normal, so this doesn't exist. There's so much that's happened, actually, you know, and you forget. But yeah, it was an interesting time, really interesting.
Sounds it.
Yeah.
Like you're quite like a, you know, from what I kind of understand, we've only met once before, but like quite like a sociable person. Like you know, we talked a bit about like the 9/8 collective first time we met, and obviously we'll come on to talk a bit about that before. But so much of kind of what you do and your creativity is based around being around other people, and creating in that way. So when something like lockdown comes along and cuts that sort of in-room contact off, like not being able to see your best friends or your family or your collaborators or whatever, how did you cope with that side of it?
I think, I'm not gonna lie, I think I went the opposite way completely. I was like, well, if I'm not seeing anyone, then I'm not talking to anyone. So it just kind of became this thing of, I don't know, putting yourself in like a bit of a like, I don't know, if you ignore it then it'll go away, I suppose. But it was kind of, in a way, it was kind of good. I think it was good to recharge. I think sometimes you can get caught up in social situations and forget to be with yourself, and I really haven't been with myself for a long time, so it was like nice to do that and just like sit with your thoughts, you know, and sit with things and go like, oh, how am I feeling about this, or like, what is this about, or so it was good.
So that was like probably the major positive, like having a bit of like time to, was that like reflecting on since we first met? So we've met in 2017. That was before the release of the debut EP. Big fan of the sesh. Yeah, a lot has happened. So in 3 years, obviously you released 3 EPs since then, done lots of live shows, festivals, like 20 million streams on Spotify later. More than that, I think, but I was just looking on there today. But you don't normally get the chance, presumably, to pause and just think about, like, just have a moment where everybody's stopped. So like you've kind of given this permission to maybe just have a think about things. So did that happen?
And to let it sink in. Yeah, completely. Okay. I think that was literally just like, I think sometimes you can be so caught up in things and things moving so quick that you don't actually appreciate where you're at or what you've got. And I feel like I really had a lot of like things where I wake up in the morning, I go, what is happening? My life is mad. Like, this is sick. This is so cool. Just mad. Just really, really cool. And I think, I just haven't really had a situation or a chance to do that ever. So that was a really, really lucky positive for me. To see it all from a bird's eye view and from a perspective.
Almost like step out of your own experience.
Yeah,
maybe.
Exactly. How did you find it?
I feel like I've gone through different stages of it, to be honest. Like I quite liked the beginning of lockdown when there were I think it appealed to the sort of organised part of my brain where I knew what the sort of rules were and like what the red lines were. I was quite disciplined to be like getting out of the house once a day to do your like regulation exercise. Or it's just stuff sounds, there's obviously a bit of distance since that time, but it does sound kind of extraordinary. So it was, on one hand, it was a bit of balance of just trying to establish those new routines just to sort of look after yourself. Did find myself like becoming much more aware of looking after like physical and mental health a bit more, just because you stopped doing everything else was just sort of cancelled, wasn't it? All going out and meeting people or any whatever gigs you might have booked, festivals, anything like that. And so it's all gone, which is really sad, which was obviously you kind of have that moment of being like, oh, I'm gutted about that. But what that does do is just generate all this time to be, I don't know, just, like you already said, a bit of reflection. So definitely felt it was a bit of a reset moment, I think, on certain things, that just working out what I really cared about and prioritised. This I'm finding now weirder. The fact that sort of everything's kind of opened up more, but only to a level. Definitely don't feel anywhere near like the normal. Haven't been out that much to kind of go and meet people, or have kind of seen friends and family, but in sort of parks and gardens and stuff. I don't know. I just don't really know where the kind of rules are. And also it feels like we're going to be in this stage now for quite a while. Yeah.
And it's also that thing of readjusting as to being social or like, do you know what I mean? Or being like close to people. It's just like, feels like such a weird thing to do now, do you know?
Have you been back to like the pub or like there are no like, there's no clubs, there's no parties to go to, there's no. Like, I mean, I imagine like we've got lots of friends that put on club nights, for example. Like that is what they do. Like every month they're putting on a couple of parties, and that's their livelihood, And so like those like nightlife as we know it doesn't really exist
anymore.
So what do you think? Have you thought about like the effect of that? Like DJs aren't out there playing the music they want to play. Like people can't organise the creative club nights that they might put on, the spaces that people go to, people of different, people go to meet, they go to socialise. That those have been like, I know people can go on Zoom and stuff, but like it's different. It's not the same if you go to a club night where that everybody's of a, your people are attending this club night, and so you go there to socialise like that.
Or even the smoking area and all the people you meet through that. Do you know what I mean? And like the little things and the way that people used to be close, even the strangers, like going to a club and like, I don't know, having a dance with a stranger and being close to the stranger, and like that whole thing, I think it's just so different now. Like, I don't know if it's ever going to get back to the point of, well, no, it will. It definitely will. Sorry, that's very negative. But I think it's just going to be weird readjusting to like, even like being close to someone that you don't know. Do you know what I mean? And like, or even, I don't know, wanting to go on a date with someone you don't know. It's just going to be so different, like,
Zoom dates.
Yeah, I've seen these happen. That must be so weird.
Yeah, or like socially distanced park dates and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
That just so screams awkwardness, doesn't it?
Awkward, isn't it? Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Have you missed being able to go out and dance and just cut loose?
Exactly. No, 100%. And the thing is, I love going out on my own as well. Like, I'm a big fan of just like going out and meeting strangers and seeing where the night takes you. And like, that hasn't happened for ages. So that's been real sad because, I just feel like there's so many like stories I'll never get to hear, or like, do you know what I mean? Or little worlds that you can just, I don't know. But hopefully one day we'll get back into it.
If we're talking about the topic of like nightclubs or bars, and I mean, I know bars have reopened, but like music venues and club nights and stuff, I just don't see a way of that coming back, like this year certainly.
Have you seen the socially distanced ones that they've tried as well? Oh, it's the most awkward thing I think I've ever seen in my whole life.
I saw a photo.
Actually, it was so sad. It was like,
was this like up on the platforms with the like, so the photo that I saw, and this is not to like criticize anybody's efforts to like put on this show,
of course,
or anybody that went like desperate for a night out. I know they put on a series of gigs recently, I think it was up in the northeast, where there was like a festival stage, and then there were these platforms where you could go and you'd be with like your friends or your family that your bubble, if you like, and then it was just a series of these platforms, this field of just sort of it looked just it looked wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it just wasn't.
That actually sounds better than the one that I saw.
Oh, really? What did you see?
I think it was like midway through lockdown, but I think it was somewhere in like the Netherlands or something.
Right.
And people were sat down individually 2 meters apart, but you weren't allowed to get up or to like whatever. So people were just like, and the DJ was just like, I don't know, it was a really weird thing to look at. I was like, what is happening?
And yeah, it makes me nostalgic for a time when a stranger would spill their pint over you.
Yeah. And you go, what? And they'd be like, oh man, I'll buy you a drink. All right.
You never see them again.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't know what the effect will be like long term on creators, like nightlife, people that are involved in putting on nights and stuff. What are the conversations like with, for example, the 9/8 collective? Like within, for anybody that doesn't know, like you're part of a collective of creators and making music and artists and visuals, like people you've worked with consistency for the last like 4 or 5 years on some of your output, and also you contribute to the 9/8 collective. We
work collaboratively on
exactly.
Yeah.
So how are they all doing? How are people navigating it? Like, are they also finding this period challenging?
Super weird, I think. I mean, I saw them all there recently. I did a video shoot for a track it's coming out soon. But even that was really strange because it was just like we used to be very consistent in meeting up and chatting all the time and stuff like that. Once lockdown happened, I think everyone just kind of went into their bubble and was just a bit like, ooh, like, I don't know. And then to see everyone back in a big room together again, it was just like mad.
Was it nice or was it weird? Or like, how do you, I suppose the key thing is like being forced to communicate in a different way.
It was really nice, but it was also like we had so much to catch up on, and also like everyone's got the same stuff to catch up. It was weird, but it was so lovely. It was just kind of that thing as well, I think, of like when we were like saying goodbye and stuff, I was like, geez, we might see them for like another while now. That was weird. But sure, yeah, just different times. I'm glad we're doing the stuff we're doing now, because luckily end of last year, I think it was, or the start of this year, we were making a tape together and we spent weeks on end in the same room together. And then lockdown happened, obviously, and we didn't see each other at all. So it was nice and almost like really lucky that we had that time.
Are you one of these people that's kind of hung on every detail and like update about what's been going on, or at the other end of the spectrum, it's easy to like wake up in the morning, open your phone and just feel completely depressed about the state of things, and therefore some people take the opportunity to just distance themselves from just like, you know what, I need to give myself a break from all this. Where do you lie on the spectrum normally? I
think for a while it was very much like ignoring it all and being like, no, I'm just gonna like pretend like this is what I want to do and it's a holiday, but it's not. And that's a very lucky way for me to look at it. But I think then you get flashed of reality and you're like, whoa, and you have to like even looking up the long-term effects of like some people are going to have for the rest of their lives possibly, and it's just like, I don't know, there's a lot of really depressing facts that pop up sometimes and you're like, Jesus Christ. You know, I think you can kind of not forget, but just kind of sometimes you're like, you look at the death toll every day and you're like, oh my God. Wow. But yeah, let's not get sad.
yeah, exactly. Final question on that. Hopefully this might have an optimistic answer. It might not. How do you think it's uniquely affected people of your generation, people in like the early 20s? Like, obviously the mental health aspect of just everybody has experienced of going through the pandemic. But what about like opportunity wise? Like personally for you, you've kind of got a bit of a foundation to work with that, like, you know, post-pandemic you'll be able to kind of pick up with things, start creating music, and you've got like an audience. What do you think people sort of more generally in their early 20s, like what do you think the big effect is going to be? Is it like the lack of opportunity for expressing themselves at a club night or getting a job? It
depends obviously from case to case, a person and how they're like going through it. I think jobs is something that people have really like been speaking about recently, like even trying to get a pub job now. There's like a huge queue of people trying to do that.
Is there still a pub in the family? Because your parents ran a pub at one point?
Yeah.
They still got a pub?
They've got a hostel.
Oh, okay, cool.
And they still live over a pub.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, positively though, there definitely has been like, I don't know, I think room for conversation and stuff that maybe hadn't happened before on such a wide scale, like when it comes to BLM and like just a load of conversation, even between like mental health and everything else as well. So I think in a positive way, like people have had more open conversations and stuff like that, which has been nice. Individually, people are going through it, but on a wider scale, I think communication and conversations have been happening that are really important. So it's been nice.
So the first time we met, already mentioned it, was like 3 years ago. You were just starting out. You'd been working on material that ended up being on the debut EP. What's happened since then? You've released 3 EPs.
Yeah.
You mentioned it a minute ago, like you've had a chance to kind of reflect recently on just some of the stuff that's been happening. But just talk me through a few of the highlights have been since that period. Like, you know, at that point, I don't think you'd even played a live show. I think the idea of putting together like a band was still something you were thinking about. Yeah. What have been some of the things that you just have been like, wow, fantastic, like loved doing that since?
Live shows, when it comes to mind, there was one we did in Barcelona that was insane. And that was really, really cool to see how many people came out for that. And I think as well, I've been really lucky with the people I've worked with for my band as well. Like, they're just incredible musicians as well as great friends. So the way that panned out was great. And yeah, it's just been a really fast and incredible like time.
At that point, we were talking about tracks like Vice City and like the early material. At that point, did you already have, were you thinking, I want to release almost like a trilogy of EPs? Yeah. You already knew that?
100%.
Okay, cool.
I don't think I did it exactly the way I wanted to do it.
Okay.
Because the way that I was going to do it was there's going to be different names for the characters in each of them. Not the characters, but the people, the person who it was about, whatever. And the way visually I wanted it to look was slightly different as well. But the way that they came out ended up being a lot more personal, I think, and a lot more, like, even like visually, I feel like it was just a lot more kind of myself rather than like someone else playing it.
2020 has obviously wiped out most people's plans and affected schedules and stuff. Were you at the point where you were starting to think about a debut album, or what was the project you were working on when things kind of got paused?
To be fair, actually, I was only doing kind of like, I've just been working on music to the point now where I'm kind of like, I don't know, like before lockdown I was in studio constantly, and I feel like I've just got this big bucket of tunes, and I think at that point you kind of, the more you add on to it, the more you like put into it, sometimes it can be great, but also sometimes you like kind of lose what you're looking for with it. Do you know what I mean? You're like just mass producing something, like, whereas I feel like the love you kind of lose the love out of it sometimes. Having that break was really important, and now going into it I'm like, I've got these like 5 tracks that I'm really excited for. I kind of feel like that wants to be on the album. And then there's 3 tracks that I want to put out this year, but I'm still just kind of figuring out as I go.
I was going to say, because if you had a very firm vision for like how the trilogy of EPs went, and they each dealt with a different character, a different period, like when it comes to an album, like a traditional album would be like, I don't know, 12, 15 tracks or something. So in your mind, do you think, were you to create an album, you'd like chapterize it? Would there be like a narrative woven into it? Would it just be a collection of songs that you've been working on that you really liked? Or do you have a vision for what you'd want to do with that?
I've got definitely like the idea of the world that I want it to be in, and the way that it looks and the way that it feels. And I think it's almost just a mature version of myself, and a lot more kind of, I don't know, allowing myself to be less like, how do I word it? It's more kind of just like the darker but also sometimes more exciting parts of going into like adulthood, and the experiences in that. I mean, it's still being written, but I feel like hopefully it'll write itself when I know about, like, I can feel where I want it to go.
With the live aspect of things kind of pretty much just paused for the moment, who knows when that will come back. Do you feel, I know some artists were like, I'm just going to wait, like it doesn't feel like the right moment to be releasing music, and it feels like things have sort of moved on from that, and it's lots of people just want to put music out there now because we can't wait forever. You maybe like creativity just can't stop, like you can just like start releasing music again, even though the live part of things isn't there. Is that how you feel about it? Do you think that you'll kind of pick up and still want to continue releasing music for the rest of this year?
I think so. I think there's a lot of tunes I'm sitting on that I feel like if I don't release them, I just like, it will have passed. It
then just becomes history otherwise, and it's kind of like, the time's not right for that. Like it goes into the sort of the holding area, or it just sits on the hard drive forever sort of thing. Yeah,
I mean, there's so many tracks like even that I've released or that I've made within the time of like when we first met, and none of them will ever come out, only because like they've had their, do you know what I mean? They've had their time, we've moved past it. So it's like, I don't know, with these ones I feel like I'd love to have them released this year. But yeah, work it out.
The first conversation we ever had, I sat with kind of amazement as we talked about all the different variety of like jobs and things that you'd done. And the thing that keeps always popping up in every interview or thing that I've seen with you since is like the whole poker dealer thing.
Yeah, it's weird recently as well.
People are really fascinated with it, aren't they? I mean, you did a variety of jobs kind of growing up from working at your parents' bar out in Spain through to being a poker dealer in London, through to, you went to beer school, right? Did you go to beer school?
Yeah,
was that when you were in London?
That was here.
What was that experience like? Is that like an interest you kind of wanted to follow up on, or what?
It was cool. I mean, it was just kind of, I think I was a bit young, so I was just like, we're just getting pissed. It's cool. But it was just a week. It was like an induction day for, what do they call it? Draft House. Mm-hmm. So working for them, and they were starting off like this new, opening up this new branch. So they were like, oh, well, we'll just take you through like wine tasting and beer tasting, everything else. So you get to learn about it before you start. It was really cool though, really interesting. I mean, I feel like I'm still an Amstel girl at the end of it, but it's really like cool to know and to know about different beers and stuff, I suppose. Yeah.
One thing that has happened is, in a bid to kind of take care of myself during lockdown, is I've got big into low alcohol and no alcohol beer.
Oh, that's so good.
And it's good. Like the variety is pretty decent now.
Yeah,
like, they're not terrible.
No, it's true. There's really good Portuguese one you should try.
Okay, what's it called?
It begins with an S. I think it's Sagres.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's so good. But yeah.
I think we should do the Biig Piig no alcohol beer merch line.
That would be sick.
I reckon it would
fly. Do you know how for it? Do you know how to brew?
I don't, but I'm quite keen to learn now. Yeah. You know what? Like, it is. There's a business that is growing like during lockdown. Like, I think that's like more people have. Yeah, and it's big. It's big business. Like, it seems like all those breweries are suddenly like rushing to try and create ranges of like no alcohol.
Yeah, because there used to not be any really. Like there'd be like one or two, but not many. Like, and it's really difficult to go into a pub and find one that has. It's
still quite difficult. I'd say pubs are still tricky. Like, they don't tend to have much of a offering.
Variety with it. Yeah,
but I think it will become like quite a big thing.
I hope so.
A little while ago, with Loud and Quiet and the magazine that we make, my colleague Stu came to visit you at your flat down in Peckham at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you did a tarot reading for him. Or you had your tarot
Jesus,
cards.
Yeah.
Are you still doing that?
No. I actually I didn't lose them. They just disappeared.
Oh.
And I felt like it was a sign that I should stop. They were like, stop messing with people's lives. Just leave it alone. And I was like, okay.
Did they get lost in like a move or something? And he was like,
yeah, well, kind of. And then like, I thought I put them in my bag. I'd opened it up and they weren't there. And I was like, ooh. But yeah, I'm still really into them and stuff. But I just don't think I'm the right person to be using them.
Right.
Yeah, I'm also really like superstitious and quite like scared of spirits and stuff as well. So I'm just a bit like, maybe I shouldn't be playing with this. But yeah, can't remember what he said for his actually.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The other day I saw a video though where you'd gone to like Joey Crooks' house for like a cooking dinner YouTube video interview thing, and you did Joy's reading then, and I'm quite interested in it. But like, did you feel? Yeah, why do you think you were like attracted to it in the first place?
I think the thing is, the reason I got the cards is because your man next door that we lived to, he just brought them over and he was like left them on our doorstep. And we were like, what? And his wife came over. She was like, yeah, I mean, it's good luck if you give us a penny, then you can just start using them. I was like, sick. So then I looked into it and there was like a lot of that. And yeah, I've always loved like readings and like the idea of, I don't know, with tarot especially, like there's always a resolve. It's never a bad thing. It's either like a learning curve or like a positive thing. Do you know what I mean? I've always liked the idea that like people can understand each other and there's something maybe we don't. I don't know, we can be vulnerable enough to open up that way, I think, as well. I think people do when it's like things like that. So, but I don't think I'm meant to do it, so I don't think I'm going to do it anymore.
Can you do your own tarot reading? Because I've never done it. So like, could you? Was it always in conversation with somebody else, or was it something you could just do?
No, you could do for yourself as well,
okay.
But you're not supposed to do it more than like once every 3 months, I think, for yourself or something like that. Just because you could drive yourself mad, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then just like end up with all these different pathways.
Yeah.
Today I'm supposed to be.
Where am I supposed to be going?
Yeah. Who else did you kind of do readings with? Because what you were like big into it for a while.
Yeah, I did readings for Sam and I, Nate, Liban and Nyana, for them. Who else did I do it for? My housemates, my manager. Okay. That was really weird. That was like, he got really freaked out and he was like, I don't know. And he was like, actually, I wish you didn't do that. That's really like quite intense.
I really hope like prosperity came out of that one.
Yeah.
It's like, all our fortunes are based on this. Like, please let this be good.
We're going to make, It It was funny. But yeah, some of them really, really hit hard and really hit home with a lot of people. I feel like, I do think that like energies are definitely a thing, and I think there's definitely stuff that we can't control with like how things pan out and higher powers and stuff like that. But yeah, that was a intense one with him. Who else did I do? I did. Yeah, I kind of felt bad because when it was Stu and your man that came with him,
the photographer, I think it was Tom or something like that.
Oh jeez, I think I just felt so bad after I think Tom's. I was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry.
I can just imagine you like at a festival going around like the backstage area doing it with like different artists and just freaking people out.
Well, originally there was actually an idea to do a podcast for people to do that, and then I was actually, you know what? I'm asking a lot if someone asks to like come onto that, and suddenly like, yeah, just tell me about all your trauma. Like, that would be horrible. Yeah, so we didn't end up doing that in the end.
Yeah, in the last 3 years, like the journey for you is kind of built, and like you've discovered kind of new fans in different artists.
Yeah.
And you know, you've been asked before, like Billie Eilish has said that she's a fan of your work or enjoyed a couple of your tracks. Yeah, how was that felt finding people already with large audiences discovering your stuff, and I guess kind of probably sending some new fans in your direction? Has it felt like that?
It felt really cool. I feel like it's that thing of the reach that you forget about how like far music can get to and how many people it kind of reaches. And it's just like, it's a bit of a reality check where you're like, oh, that's mad that I made this. And especially with things like my old tunes where I'm like, oh, we literally made this in Lloyd's bedroom, and suddenly like someone on the other side of the planet, I don't know, with like a lot of stuff going on, like it's just bumping it and you're like, whoa, how did that happen? But yeah, it's been really cool. And then with the audience and stuff, it's grown, I think, a lot in the last couple of years, and it's definitely a lot to be said for people like that, sharing it and everything else. It's been really cool. Really grateful for him.
And how do you feel about like kind of nurturing that, as in you mentioned right at the top, doing things like the bedtime stories and the Spanish lessons during lockdown? Like, do you see like having a growing fan base as something you need to like strengthen the bond and constantly have like an open dialogue? Like, what's your relationship like to having a fan base?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's very like, you pick your moments where you're like, oh, maybe, do you know what, come on in, and like whatever else. Like, even there was when we were living over here, just little things of like what we do in our day in quarantine or whatever. I think quarantine has definitely been something where you end up with that kind of need for social interaction probably. But with me it was like, oh well, this is what I'm doing, maybe I should just show them, and like, dunno, feels a bit good like to know that people are watching in case anything happens. No, but it was grand. There was just like showing people around the house, and just, yeah.
Like some days you like having fun with it, and some days it's like, no, it's like
yeah,
not the day to open
like,
the door today.
Yeah, or some days I want to just close it. And I also feel like I can be quite impulsive with it sometimes, where I'm just like, end up, I don't know, there's a couple of times where I end up getting drunk, and I was just like, instead of drunk calling friends, I just like drunk go on like Instagram live and start talking to people, and I was like, this is not healthy. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's just trying to work out.
You're like, come on board, Stacey from Australia.
Yeah.
What are you doing today?
How are you, babe? Yeah. Do you want to see? Look at my, like, I'll just, oh
see
my
what's
God.
in the fridge.
Yeah.
Nothing. Oh.
So tell me about your love life. Like, oh, it's just, do you know what? So yeah, I think there's definitely a need to
There's the other podcast idea. If you don't do like tarot readings, it could be like drunk calling Biig Piig.
Oh Jesus Christ. That'd be awful. Non-alcoholic beers. Getting drunk on non-alcoholic beers.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, it's been interesting.
One thing, like I was reading back, like when we reading back some of the stuff we talked about when we first met, and there was something that jumped out to me, like a quote, something that you said to me that I thought was really interesting, that said, I feel like with every job that I do, it's important to learn something new. And if you're not learning something new, then you're not going to feel happy about what you're doing. So I wanted to kind of finish by asking you, what do you think the key things you've learned from being like a full-time musician the last couple of years? Like what are the key things from being, now that your job is a musician, what have you learned from that new job?
I think I've learned a lot about what I hold dear and what I hold close. Just from like the amount of writing that I do now, it's just let me kind of understand myself so much more, and like the way that I deal with relationships and everything else. It's just like self-therapy. Well, that's not true. Don't do that, because that's not a real thing. Self-therapy is not a thing. But yeah, it is really therapeutic. And then what else has it taught me? It's taught me about just like people I hold dear, and like I think as well, I mean, I went through a lot of changes with the last 2 or 3 years. I don't know, in moving around and fallouts and all that, and I don't know, I feel like it's really taught me, I don't know, music has genuinely been such a savior for me in so many ways, even with the people that I've met through it, when it comes to like Ava or like Lava and Lloyd and 9/8, and I don't know, it's that thing that I'm just so lucky to have, where if anything ever happens, we've just got each other, we've got that bond that's just unbreakable. So it's just, I don't know, I owe a lot to it. As for the musical side of stuff, it's been cool. And then I feel like, don't know, you're not always going to get it right. Do you know what I mean? You're not always going to come out with something that I used to be very picky when I used to write, and I used to be like, if this isn't written in 20 minutes, then it's just not a thing. Whereas like now I feel like I'm much more patient with it, and I give myself time, and sometimes you're not going to have it all worked out, and you got to come back to it. You got to, I don't know, just give yourself a minute, you know? Life's too short.
So be patient with yourself, and the power of friendship through music has been a saving grace.
Yes, yeah, literally that.
Anyway, good night.